Chapter 2. The Rearranged Scrimshaw. The first night at Whaler's Watch was far from the peaceful retreat Bess had promised. The wind off the Atlantic didn't just blow, it shrieked, rattling the heavy window panes of the Saltbox mansion until they hummed like a tuning fork. Nancy lay awake in the guest room, her mind replaying the image of the 20 ivory teeth pointing toward the oak-paneled wall. By 7 a.m., the fog had rolled in so thick it pressed against the glass like a wall of wet wool. Nancy dressed in a sturdy navy and white striped nautical sweater and sensible trousers. She found Bess in the kitchen, nursing a cup of tea and looking jumpy. "Did you hear it, Nancy?" Bess whispered, her eyes wide. "The scratching? I thought it was just mice at first, but it sounded rhythmic." "I heard the wind, Bess, but nothing rhythmic," Nancy replied, though she immediately made a mental note. "Let's go back to the sunroom. I want to see if the sentinels have moved again." The sunroom was cold, the dampness of the Maine coast seeping through the stone foundation. Nancy walked straight to the mantel. The Scrimshaw teeth remained exactly where they had been the night before, angled 45 degrees away from the sea, pointing toward the corner of the fireplace. "Look at the carvings on the teeth themselves," Nancy said, pulling a small magnifying glass from her pocket. "Captain Thorne mentioned these were engraved by his great-grandfather. Most are whaling scenes, ships, harpoons, waves." She moved the glass over the third tooth from the left. "But this one is different. It's a map. See? That's the coastline of Blackwood Cove, and right here, carved into the ivory, is a tiny X marks the spot where this very house stands." Bess leaned in, squinting. "And the X is right where the tooth is pointing. Nancy, do you think there's a treasure hidden in the walls, like a pirate's chest?" "It's possible," Nancy mused, "but Captain Thorne is a collector of history, not necessarily gold. If there's something behind that panel, it's likely something he didn't even know was there." Nancy stepped toward the oak paneling. She pressed her ear against the wood and tapped gently. Unlike the solid thud of the surrounding walls, this section returned a faint, hollow ring. She ran her fingers along the grooves of the molding, looking for a hidden catch or a spring-loaded hinge. "Nothing," she muttered. "But look at the floorboards, Bess." On the dark polished wood, just inches from the wall, were 3 distinct circular indentations. They were fresh, having crushed the wax finish of the floor. "Those look like they were made by something heavy," Bess noted, "like the legs of a tripod or a heavy trunk." "Or a hydraulic jack," Nancy added, her voice dropping an octave. "Bess, remember the history of this coast. During the Great War, and even now, these coves were famous for more than just fishing. They were the perfect landing spots for black market cargo." "You mean smugglers?" Bess gasped. "In Captain Thorne's house?" "It would explain why he's so protective of this room, but if he's involved, why would he let us stay here? No, someone is using Whaler's Watch without his knowledge, and they're using the captain's own collection to mark the spot." Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed from the cellar below. It wasn't the sound of a settling house. It was the unmistakable sound of a heavy wooden beam under pressure. "The cellar," Nancy whispered, grabbing her electric torch. "Stay behind me, Bess." The cellar stairs were narrow and steep, carved directly into the granite cliffside. As they descended, the air grew colder and smelled strongly of brine and rotting kelp. Nancy clicked on her torch, the beam cutting through the darkness to reveal rows of dusty wine casks and old sailing crates. At the far end of the cellar, the granite wall was wet. A slow trickle of seawater ran down the stone, pooling on the floor. Nancy shined her light toward the ceiling, directly beneath the sunroom. There, Braced against the floor joists was a modern steel pillar that looked entirely out of place in a 19th century basement. It was a hydraulic lift, camouflaged with old timber to look like a structural support. "Bess," Nancy breathed, "this isn't a house, it's a loading dock." Before they could investigate further, a heavy thud sounded from the top of the stairs. The cellar door, the only way out, had been slammed shut. Nancy rushed to the stairs and pulled the handle. It wouldn't budge. From the other side, she heard the distinct click-clack of a key turning in the lock, followed by the soft, retreating footsteps of someone wearing rubber-soled shoes. "We're locked in!" Bess cried, her voice rising in panic. Nancy didn't panic. She turned her torch back toward the wet granite wall. "Not necessarily, Bess. If cargo comes up through here, there must be a way for it to come in from the sea. We just have to find the gate before the tide rises." To be continued.